All right, we're joined by our good friend Bryce Koon of 247 Sports. Good evening or good day, good sir. I forget the time at the exact moment that we're recording this, but nevertheless, good to have you back. Glad to have you in here.
Hey man, I'm pumped to be here, and no matter it's night or day, hey, we're gonna continue chugging along through this spring football portion and getting ready for this portal to open. And I don't know, unless I open the window, I don't really know what time of the day it is. I spend too much time in this little room right here.
Yeah, I know. Look, I on Saturday when we were out at practice, I've started this carnivore diet, so I come home and my wife's like, what are y'all doing? What do you want to do for dinner? And I'm like, dinner. And I look up and it's 5 o'clock and I'm like, dude, our day has been wasted away here. I didn't even think about it. So during spring, we can definitely lose all concept of time, but it's good to be here and good to have some baseball, football, and March Madness. So, Bryce, I want to start off with that. Today, LSU is back out at practice in the indoor facility. We're going to talk about that, which maybe you saw today, but also what you and I observed on Saturday as well. I guess starting from today, was there anything? Emory Jones was back at practice, but other than his reemergence, was there anything that you learned today out at LSU football?
I would say not a ton. I mean, it really feels like Jacobian Guillory's the leader of that defensive tackle group, and you can kind of take that for what you want with it. I think they still need help. They still need a dude, and probably more than that. That's really the biggest thing. I mean, 20-minute viewing today, not a ton. We can get into it. I have concerns about the secondary, especially the safety position in terms of coverage, and I think you and I talked about that on Saturday a little bit as we were kind of walking back and forth up down the field. Jordan Gilbert, Major Burns. Burns been put in that star role, but you really got to have a guy that can cover back there, and
Right.
they're going to be relying on some young players. Whether they want to feel like they want to put Toviano there. Deshawn McBride has looked really good, and I even say he looked really good again today. It would not surprise me if McBride gets some serious PT as the season goes along. But that's kind of my big concern is the secondary position. Outside of that, pretty status quo, man. I mean, that rumble for QB2 continues. Brian Kelly talked about it on Saturday. AJ Swan looked crisp today throwing the football. CJ Daniels impressed still in that second team kind of starting group, but Kelly's been very adamant. There's probably 6 to 7 guys that could get some legitimate reps. I'm not concerned if I'm an LSU fan. I'm sitting there saying, are our transfers not hits? I think the guys who are on that, one rep line have done a good job. And you're just showing off depth. You probably don't have a Malik Neighbors or a Brian Thomas in that equation, but you've got some really good talent that's probably a little bit deeper than it has been in previous seasons.
Let's start at that safety. Bryce, there's always, and you've been in recruiting, so you know this more than most, but there's always that one freshman guy that stands out amongst the crowd. Look, I don't really go to a lot of high school football games, but when I do, I think people make fun of me because it's like, oh, well, who's he here to see? Deshawn McBride was the guy when he was a junior and he led the state in interceptions, broke the record with interceptions inside the state that I've just been so very high on. And now that he has come into LSU
Mm.
and started to emerge himself, Bryce, I said this last night. I'll kick this over to you and get your thoughts. I don't see a world where he's not at minimum right now a rotation piece. Now we got a long way to go. August, still got to go through August. You still got to go through a lot of things. But if there is one guy that you look at and say to yourself, he is standing out, he is the talk of camp, it's got to be Deshawn McBride, in my opinion. What would say you?
I agree. I don't think if this team suited up tomorrow or this Saturday, McBride's a rotational piece. He
I
has earned the right to be a part of this rotation. Does he start? I don't think so. I think Kelly's going to go with the veteran guys, but by the end of the season, I think McBride's going to be one of the freshmen that we circle and say, okay, if not for him, maybe this secondary doesn't perform as well as they end up performing, or they don't have certain rankings because the kid's just a gamer. And you mentioned kind of the high school ranks. I was able, he was one of the first guys I went to go see when I kind of got down to the Baton Rouge area. I live about 15 minutes from Denham Springs High School. So I've been over there,
right.
a bunch of times, talked with that coaching staff over there. And they said the transformation that he made from sophomore and then going into his junior and then into his senior season, they like, and I'll say this, the part of the coaching staff said, we didn't think that he would be an LSU take. Like when he got to Denham Springs High School, when he started to really get into work, this was a kid who was a deer in the headlights, but he took it seriously. So with that in mind, it's not really a surprise if this is a habit that he's been building from junior to senior and now into the season through spring ball. It's not a habit that he's picking this stuff up quickly. Great twitchy athlete on the back end, can make plays in the run game. But I think, and like I kind of mentioned earlier, they need help in coverage with its safety, and I think he is a guy that can help provide that, especially when you look at how the rest of the secondary might need to shake out. Do they need Toviano at one of the corners? If that's what they need, maybe McBride is the best option back there to help out at safety.
Yeah, believe it or not, I know I'm going to get killed over this. I had him as my number one inside the state. I thought because of just teams going away from him, and I think I was a little biased because Brett Beard, who is the head coach at Denham Springs, was my D-line coach, and
Great
and
guy, great guy.
Now he is. He would tell you a completely different story over a decade ago how he used to treat a fat Blake Ruffino as a freshman in high school. Bryce Koon joining us. You also stated that Jacoby and Guillory, the leader of that interior of that defensive line, was there something today that happened that made you see, or is this something that happened Saturday too? What do you take away in saying that about Jacoby and Guillory?
I think the biggest thing Bo Davis is looking for is not necessarily a coach on the field, but a guy that can galvanize that group and get them into shape and is more of a vocal leader. Guillory, I don't know if he was that last year, just with the names they had there. Mekhi Wingo was more of a lead by example. Mason Smith, whatever you want to say about him, I mean, those guys were kind of the point men. Outside of that, you really didn't know. Jordan Jefferson, vocal guy, like we knew that. But
Right.
today in particular, when Bo Davis was doing some of the coaching, and you and I've talked about this, he does not mince words when he's coaching, even when the media is there or any guest of any kind. Guillory started to kind of coach on the field. They went into obviously running against a scout team offense, but Guillory was out there with that first team defensive group and was making sure guys were getting lined up, because you had a guy like Ahmad Barrow that is getting some reps and switching in and out, and they're trying to find some competition and a common group that's going to work well together. He kind of kept Guillory out there as kind of a point man. And to me, that showed, hey, even when the second team unit comes in and Guillory's out there, he's trying to have an extension of himself out on the field. And so maybe that is a Jacoby and Guillory. That kind of stood out to me. That could be taken a lot of different ways. That was my take on it. But I think that you have to identify that. Whether or not Guillory's going to put up crazy all SEC numbers or not, Bo Davis needs to find some type of needs to find a guy out there that can be an extension of him on the field for pressure situations. Because look, as good of Coach Bo Davis is, when it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, on the road, or whether it's in Tiger Stadium, that place is rocking. You have to have a guy who's a calming influence that can help guys understand what's happening and what's going on. And so we didn't see that. Communication was not good last year at all. If Guillory can be that on the interior, that's massive in terms of when you turn the calendar to April 15th. Big board time for the transfer portal. I mentioned the guy, Blake, like that's for me. Is the guy an all SEC type of player? I don't know if that's going to be in the portal. But if they can feel comfortable with getting a couple of dudes that they feel like can be rotational pieces, and Guillory can be the vocal leader, maybe that helps his play to continue on as well. I really don't know, but Guillory to me seems like the clear-cut leader of that interior defensive line.
Let's stick there very quickly on the portal. There's a lot of people, and I know some national guys, Josh Pate has said it too, that on April 15th, the portal is going to explode. Have you heard anything? And I know that he has elaborated in reference to coaches knowing the guys that will be on their roster come August that won't even be here and they'll be elsewhere, but players that coming in. Or have you picked up on any of that kind of stuff?
Yes, I'll start national, just talking with different people in different departments across the country. Yeah, like this is going to be this is going to be crazy. And because I think guys are getting a sense of where they stack up on a roster. Remember, this can be post spring game. They have an understanding of where they may be able to go. That's one crowd. And I'm going to go back with, specifically LSU fans. We remember as a guy like Zalance Hurd, who no one thought might enter the portal. I think there's going to be a couple of programs that can maybe dangle an NIL package. They can dangle the bag, per se, in front of these kids to say, yeah, I might be a rotational or first team guy here at this school, but so-and-so over there has got a bag, and they've got some serious money, and I can still be impactful over there. So I think we're going to see two different groups in that sense. Now, how it affects LSU specifically, it's going to be interesting, Blake. I mean, I don't know if you have a firm roster count from talking with different people. We kind of have them sitting at around 88 to 89 guys potentially.
I have him at 88.
That's
Right.
including a Josh Williams and a Damian Ramos, but those guys are starters. You got to include them into the fold there. So you kind of start doing some of the math, and we were talking, kind of bouncing this off of one another, before media availability today, was maybe 5, 6 guys, because if you're going to get under that number before fall camp, you have to have some attrition. If you're going to add to what they want to add, you're going to have even more, attrition. So it's going to be crazy in terms of a national scale, I think, because you got to remember a lot of these kids that signed under a Nick Saban, they signed under a Kalen DeBoer at Washington, they signed under different coaches elsewhere. I mean, you can keep going down that list. A Jed Fish at Arizona. Maybe they want to try to get out of it. Maybe this trial with this new coaching staff's not what they thought they wanted to be. The big kicker here, Blake, and I'll end it here, is that inter-SEC rule that is going to hinder a lot of these guys. I think that there's some guys LSU would like to bring in. I think there's guys, across the SEC that say, hey, I want to go play at that school or that school, that are not going to be able to do it this year. But we kind of know with the instability of the NCAA, I believe this is not going to get fixed this year, but next year, I don't think that rule is going to exist anymore.
Okay, I know we're kind of deviating, but I kind of want to stick on that for just one quick second. I got a hypothetical question. Jacoby Matthews is a guy from inside the state. Okay, I'm just throwing him out there because people and LSU fans can resonate to him because of recruiting. What stops him from saying that you can't stop me from transferring inside the conference? Because Bryce, again, a very massive hypothetical, but I can sue, and there's nothing that you can do about it, right? And so I do even question that. And then with the West Virginia federal ruling of 2-time transfers, and I was trying to be the person, got ridiculed, but was trying to be the person that, even when the Tennessee stuff happened, hey, I don't like the NCAA just as much as you do. But if you think that you can't have law and order, and that their Wild Wild West doesn't get even wilder, it's crazy. Now, I do agree with you. I think that there's going to be some very interesting things that we see here. Bryce, let's look back a little bit into Saturday. You and I had a conversation off air a lot throughout practice. I think the number one thing for me, concerning wise, was the defensive line. I want to start there with you. The running game, but the positive was Caleb Jackson in all of that. I guess, what are some of your big things that you took away from this past Saturday that maybe LSU needs to really focus on? Or, in a double-ended question here, what are some positives that you had?
I'll start with positives. You kind of hinted at Caleb Jackson. I feel like we're seeing him become more of a running back, not just an athlete and the superb athlete that he is, just back there using his God-given ability. That's what we saw last year. I think he's starting to understand, and even talking with DJ Chester today, just about, both those guys came in the same class. What has he seen? He said, like, he understands the blocking concepts more. Like, he understands, this is where I'm supposed to go. This is how you're going to do that. And look, we know he's got a guy ahead of him, potentially, you can call it on the depth chart, that is probably one of the best blocking running backs in the country. And Josh Williams, I mean, literally understands it and gets highlight tape off of it. Like, that's how good this guy is. And Josh Williams is going to have a spot on an NFL roster due to special teams of being able to understand those two key things. And whatever he adds as a running back is just going to be cherry on top for a team on Sundays. So for Caleb Jackson, that is massive in terms of Frank Wilson doesn't have a lot of options. You don't know what you're going to be able to get in the portal. You're going to have to find a specific fit who understands this isn't an RB1 job that you're kind of walking into Baton Rouge with. So if Caleb Jackson makes that ascent, it opens up this kind of new zone running scheme massively, because you have two backs who Josh Williams feels like the more in between the tackles guy. Caleb Jackson, as big and powerful as he is dangerous outside the tackles. So if they want to run some of those outside zone concepts, you're looking at a guy, and I know LSU fans saw this. It just reminds me of a Leonard, maybe, is this crazy? A more athletic Leonard Fournette.
No,
is that possible?
No, I said it last night. Bryce, without question, from inside position, especially under center, when he's going outside, he's quicker off the line than Lenny ever was. Like, it's not even Look, I love Lenny. I mean, we
Great,
got
fantastic, one of the best that we've seen come through LSU in a long time.
no doubt got a Lenny thing right here in the studio. He did not hit the line of scrimmage the way that Caleb Jackson's hitting the line of scrimmage. It's not. I mean,
Yeah.
I love Lenny, but the kid from that aspect is hitting on a different way. And Bryce, to your point there, the play action boot that's coming behind it. So you have all the things that you ran last year, which we saw, obviously Jane Daniels win a Heisman off of. But on Saturday, the play action boot, and I know you're like, I like this. I kept hearing you. I like this. It was unguardable because you have to flow so heavy to Caleb Jackson, because if he gets to the outside, you're in trouble. That opened up things for Garrett.
Yeah, it's really scary to think about. I mean, what they could do with this, because I am really trying to think across college football when we have seen raw power, raw athleticism, and size and skill that we've seen out of Caleb Jackson. It's just that unique. He's a unicorn type of athlete.
Right.
And if Frank Wilson has really done the work with him, and it feels like he has, to understand what it means. Because look, when this kid was in high school, and Blake, you can attest this, like you played high school ball, a lot of these kids can just get away with being the best player on the field. Like you can get away with bad technique, not maybe great vision. And I think Jackson has good vision. I think it's just understanding, okay, freshman year, I showed it in flashes, but entering kind of this next season, teams are going to know who number 28 is. Like he is going to be circled on that scouting report. So Caleb Jackson was a big, big plus for me in the weekend. And you could kind of also throw in, I know you mentioned it, the defensive line. Like that was something for me. It's like, okay, is he just doing this against a okay to, average defensive line, or is this something him? I think it's a little bit of both. But I did want to throw this other positive thing in there too. And I know you caught the last one, or you heard the last one as we were heading in. Sage Ryan, like all the drama of this fan base, not like get Sage Ryan off the field, all these different things. If they found what's best for him and he starts to flourish in this, it helps them immensely. And the biggest difference to me, Blake, is maybe he knows that slant play is coming in practice because they've run it 400 million times. But the ability to not just be in the right spot, but to capitalize, that's the difference. I don't feel like he capitalized even when he got in the right spot a lot of times last year. If that's something that can change, that is an immense jump for a guy that they are going to have to count on in big spots, in big moments, in a crucial season.
I want to stay there with Sage Ryan for just a moment. I know that he knows the slant's coming. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But I like that he is taking the ability to say, listen, I'm competing for a spot. I got to do what I got to do to win this position here. Even though I was out of position last year at the boundary, I'm moving back to safety. He picks it off. He goes for 6. But I think even the bigger thing for me there, too, was I think that he's just been out of position so much. I'm still old enough to remember he had the crucial forced fumble against Alabama that Greg Brooks recovered that should have been LSU's ball that Alabama would not have scored on that drive. So he has had moments at safety where it's been good. But I think even the first one that we saw, okay, when he breaks off of a route and goes and picks off the post, even though it was underthrown, wind, whatever, even that, like you're showing me that you're progressing and that Jake Olson has done some things there with him that maybe is going to translate into August and into the season. Let's go to the defensive line here. I think you're right when you say two things can be true at once in reference to, is this just a really good O-line? Is this a really good running back? Bryce, the problem that I have is when I went back through my notes yesterday and today, they're not getting touched. Like Josh Williams is getting 13 yards down the field before he's remotely even in the area of somebody before he's being touched. That's the problem that I have. How big of a concern was it for you in seeing some of those things?
Let's give credit to O-line. That's a Joe Moore Award finalist O-line. They've got 110%. And I certainly can't like what you said. Both things can be true. It's probably the best O-line of the SEC. I feel comfortable saying that. But, man, it's a concern. And I would be remiss if I just rolled through spring practice and didn't tell you that If they don't fix it, I don't care if Jesus Christ himself is the head coach or or the defensive coordinator. Like, I don't care. Like,
Oh
that's
god.
one thing I've cautioned fans. Like, yes, the coaching staff is immensely better, and it's going to get there. And they want to be better this year. The personnel's not there. Like, it's just not. And it's not a knock on the guys they have there. Some really good people that they have there. But man, at the end of the day, mano y mano, they're going to struggle if they cannot do anything, because I think it's going to Blake completely blow up any plan for Harold Perkins if that defensive line cannot be just at least average. Like, if they could just be middle of the pack in the SEC, it's going to free up Blake Baker to do exactly what he wants. If they can't, you're going to have people calling for Blake Baker's head week 4. I mean, just because that's the overreaction aspect of
This
what
is
college
what we're
football
paying
is.
$2.5 million for.
Exactly. And
Right.
so I'm saying here on March 26th or whatever day we're recording this, I'm sitting here saying this, like, you have to understand. I believe this is the coaching staff defensively that can get you to a national championship. I do not believe that you have the personnel to get there.
I
Currently on the roster.
1000%. Yeah, I 1000% agree. And you know what's interesting? I was asked by a very, very close friend of mine who's been in the NFL for over a decade. We grew up together, whatever. And he just asked me a simple question: how did Harold Perkins look? And I had to sit there and really think about, is it fair to tell him what I'm about to tell him, that Perkins was a non-factor on Saturday? Because, and this is what I ultimately told him, was I can't make a fair assessment of him at inside backer. Number one, because I think the defensive line even last year played so bad against Florida State that I don't think it was fair to him to abandon him, against Florida State. Like, hey, man, this is game 1. We have let linebackers at LSU do much and far worse than what he did and keep them there. But I think that Omar Spates, but I do think that there comes a point where, I mean, Garrett Dellinger's getting to the second level before he can make an accurate read. And I don't think that that's fair to him to be able to look at him at current value at what he's doing at inside backer. I do like that Blake did do some different things with him, even in that practice, but we'll have to wait and see. Last one before we move to a little baseball and maybe some recruiting here very quickly. That backup quarterback spot. Ricky throws some incompletions on Saturday. Swan drops a snap, but it didn't matter. They're competing at a very high level, and those small things help. What have you seen in that backup quarterback position on maybe who's leaning for number 2? What are your thoughts there for that position?
Knowing what Brian Kelly likes to go with, I'd give the nod right now to AJ Swan. I mean, you can't replace the experience, and people are going to make fun of it. But AJ Swan, I covered him when he was in Georgia and covered him his entire recruitment and know some people close to his camp. He wanted to challenge himself. He wanted to, because he played significant SEC snaps at Vandy, like played against some really good competition, put some good film, on tape against some really, really good teams. When you go back to the 2 times they played Georgia, and AJ Swan made some throws. Now, of course, he had some really good receivers that are no longer in Nashville, but it's one of those things where he's got the ability. And I think Brian Kelly values experience so much over just raw, untapped potential. We've seen that over the course of his career. I think Swan's going to get the nod, but I do want to give credit to Ricky Collins, because I'll be honest with you, Blake, I didn't know a lot about Ricky when I first took, the job covering LSU. I started last year, as he early enrolled, and the feeling that you just kind of got is this kid is a raw athlete. Like, he is just raw in the all the sense of that word. But man, he's really taken some steps to look more polished.
I agree.
And credit to him. I think Joe Sloan has worked a masterclass with him. Not to say that he was bad before and now he's okay. I think he was just a raw athlete. Once again, another one of those kids over at Woodlawn that understood, hey, I can get away with just being the best athlete on this field and take this team pretty far. And now he got to sit behind a Heisman candidate, a Heisman winner. He's got to sit behind Nuss. He's got to learn from what a lot of people say is one of the best quarterback coaches, not just in the SEC, but across college football. There's no better place for him to be. And I think we've seen some strides. So it's a better place to sit in than maybe before we got to see spring practice. And you're kind of wondering, like, is there some legitimate depth there? I like the battle they have, and then also want to give a nod to Colin Hurley. Garrett Nussmeier made the joke that, yeah, his birthday was the other day. He turned 17 or whatever it was, and I said, "Happy 13th birthday," because the kid's so young.
Yeah.
In Nuss fashion, as he says that nonchalantly, but Hurley's put some good throws together. He did so today. Getting the ball out to Kai Prian and Kamorian Pimpton, working in with that third team. I think it's a good problem to have. QB2 is something that you would rather be worrying about than QB1. LSU's got their QB1, and they've got some legitimate options there for QB2.
I don't think that this is a hot take, but it will, because to the people that haven't been out there, the second best thrower of the football on this team is a 17-year-old Colin Hurley. And I don't think it's remotely close. Yeah. Okay. Now, he's 17. Bryce, he can't go to a bar room. Like, he can't even get in. It's like the old rap song.
I don't even let them park there. I don't even know what they'll do. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's like the old rap song. You can't even get inside. You can't even get inside the club, So I do think that's funny. Here's the only thing that if Ricky Collins did this, I think he'd be number 2 without question. The decision making's not there. He sees it. He's not. It's a lot like what people would explain of Jaden Daniels in year 1.
Yes,
he's got to let it listen. Throw the pick. At least I know that you're making the decision. The mechanical stuff I can work on. I would rather you throw and make the mistake, because I know in the back end, a lot like Jaden, I can make the mechanical errors better than what you're doing. But I do think, because, and this is what I think is so interesting with him, he's so long, Bryce. When he goes down, he comes back, and then he releases. It's Jordan Thompson. If the kid went and played shortstop, I'm not 1,000% sure defensively that he could not play in the SEC. Just arm strength, the way that he throws. But the bottom line is, he's got to be more compact. He's got to use his lower body more. I'm not a quarterback's coach, but it's just being around baseball for, grandfather a head coach, uncle a head coach. They would tell you, every guy that has done throwing motion stuff, he's got to be more compact. And I think that would make his decision-making better, because of, hey, I can get the ball quicker and it's not going to get picked off. I want to get to some baseball with you here, Bryce. It's panic mode. It's full-on panic mode. You're a game Saturday away from winning a series, and the whole thing changes on what we think about LSU baseball. Your thoughts about this past weekend?
Well, the more I come on your show, the more people are going to realize I'm very much two things can be true. And a lot of people don't like that. They think that it's not putting the blame or not putting enough criticism on certain things. But I said this on a show yesterday. There are concerns. No doubt about it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. There are concerns about this team. But also you have to understand, and I get it. I get the hatred for Mississippi State. I get the hatred for Florida. But if you take the purple and gold tinted lenses off and you take those glasses off, you understand what Mississippi State did this past weekend. That's a pretty dang good baseball team. They're pretty good. Florida is also good, regardless of them losing these midweek games. They're good. And what they've shown is, maybe it's just a sense of rising to the occasion. They do it on the weekends. Maybe the midweeks, they're kind of like, let's just take it easy. We're going to cruise into SEC play. What I'll say is, for LSU specifically, they've got to figure some things out. Offensively, they've got to be able to consistently help Tommy White. You have a bunch of guys that, although they may be sophomores, redshirt sophomores, juniors, Blake, they don't have a ton of playing experience in these atmospheres, in these situations. There's no way to simulate that. I don't care how many times you pump crowd noise into Alex Box on a February or in October and November in the fall. I don't care. You cannot simulate what the box was this past weekend. You just can't do it. You're not going to be able to simulate Jack Caglione on a Sunday. Like, you just can't do that. So it's going to be growing pains. And this, unfortunately, is a fan base that, you saw some up and downs last year, but man, when you look back on that, that's why I told people, enjoy it. Like, what you had last year was so incredibly special. The idea that you were going to continue to roll on from that with the questions, it was never going to happen. But I still think LSU is a super talented team. I think that you are also, you're going to see what Jay Johnson is made of as a head coach. And I'm not saying that we haven't already, but I'm saying this is going to have to be probably a better coaching job than what he had to do last year. He had a lot of veteran talent, a lot of guys that could lead the way, by example. Now you're going to have to figure out. You're going to see Jay Johnson in the sense of like he's going to have to rise more and see what he can do with this unit. But look, man, I said this last time on the show when we went live. You went live after that. I guess it was the game 1, Mississippi State. I don't remember which one it was. Baseball's hard. And baseball is a game of we talk about it, but literal centimeters. I mean, you talked about that Saturday game against Florida. A ball bounces this way. That ball that Milazzo blocked. And for the people, Blake, that have the audacity to act like he didn't do everything he could to block that ball. I mean, you have never in your life put on the equipment and gone back there and tried to do what he's doing. I get it. He might not do everything perfectly, but if that ball doesn't bounce one more foot to the right, he throws the batter out, and we're talking about LSU takes 2 out of 3. I mean, it's just those small things. I don't feel like it's massive in terms of correction, but it's a bad taste in your mouth because Sunday you got punched. You got punched again. You fell down, and Florida got on top of you and just kept wailing on you, and that's what happened. There's concern. You got to figure this stuff out. I don't know what the deal with Thatcher Hurd is. I genuinely don't know. Like the kid has the talent. It is literally, for me, in between the ears. And the biggest thing I've seen, we saw it with Skeens last year, and I think you're starting to see it with Luke Holman. Luke Holman's blood pressure cannot go above like 80.
He's never sweated a day in his life.
Yeah, you said that the other day. Like, his poise is something that is going to make every single Friday night, winnable for LSU. It's going to make every single Friday night winnable for LSU. Can you find that on the rest of the staff? I don't know. And I don't think they have the experience in the offense to bail them out like they did last year. So it's going to be interesting, and it's not getting any easier. I mean, this weekend, God, Blake, I don't know if you're doing live post-game shows after this weekend. If they lose 2 or 3 or they get swept, I might turn my phone off and just enjoy Easter Sunday with the family.
You're going to really – listen, football is one thing, okay? Basketball is one thing. You want to see the true LSU fan base? Watch them get swept this weekend. See what happens. Yeah. All hell will break loose. And I'm going to tell you something. It's going to be the stupidest take of all time. However, there's going to be people in this fan base irresponsibly and being ignorant about saying things about Jay Johnson. I'm just going to tell you it's going to happen, and they're going to go nuts. But you brought up something that's massive there. You're talking about one of the best defensive catchers maybe in the SEC. If he blocks that, he gets it, he throws it to first. Again, you're talking about one play. You're one play away from winning a series against Florida. That's what's so difficult. I think if we would have gotten blown out, if LSU would have gotten blown out and Jack Caglione had 4 home runs on the weekend, I'd be like, okay, well, you're not good right now. But that's not.
It feels like empty stats if he does that. If you win Saturday, it's like, okay, I don't care what you do. Like, just get the stats on the back of your baseball card and get out of town.
Well, Bryce, this past Thursday, I said, listen, and took massive heat from the baseball elites. If you did not win Friday and Saturday, I already went in. I'm like, you're not winning Sunday. Jack Caglione has a 1.57 ERA, I think it is now. He is arguably one of the best pitchers, not only the best hitter in the league, he's arguably the best pitcher in the league compared to, depending on who you're talking to. So I just think it's look, can you take one this weekend? Can just win Friday and then all else just play free and let's see what happens. All right, Bryce Koon, 247 Sports joining us. Last question for you. You're in recruiting every day. You cover recruiting, and I think it's interesting because there's some things and tidbits that I'm picking up here that I want your opinion on. We're in a post-Saban recruiting era. Bryce, there are just some things I'm hearing. I know that Alabama's getting good players. They're getting really good commits. They ain't getting the dudes that the leans aren't maybe like it used to. What are your thoughts about the post-recruiting of Nick Saban? Not just Alabama-related, but nationally and maybe even conference-related that you're seeing.
I'll speak first to LSU's vantage point. Two 2026 linebackers and a 2025 offensive lineman. Mike DeBose is that offensive lineman, and then the two 2026 linebackers, Shadarius Tootle and Jamichael Garrett, both out of kind of the South Alabama area around Mobile. I don't want to say LSU doesn't have a chance if Saban's there, but the job's a lot harder. A lot
Correct.
harder. And I think we're starting to see some of these automatic wins because of the built-in relationships. I mean, Saban was there forever. Schools are looking elsewhere. High schools are building relationships with other, and I think LSU staff has sensed that. Kevin Peoples has made long treks throughout the state of Alabama. Blake Baker has made treks through the state of Alabama. Brad Davis has made treks through the state of Alabama to understand these borders. While I wouldn't call Alabama in that elite category of the state of recruiting, I think those are reserved for the Louisianas, the Georgias, the Floridas, the Californias, Texases of the world. But it's still got some really, really good talent. And I think that the state's borders are a little bit more open than they were. And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't mean that Kalen DeBoer and his staff aren't doing a good job. I just don't think they're going to be doing an elite job like Saban and his staff were, because you just lost a ton of recruits and recruiters. One of the biggest ones, and I know Alabama fans have talked with a couple and they've realized this, and Georgia fans realize Travaris Robertson going to Athens
No
might been one of the most massive moves of the offseason, that because so much has happened, we kind of forgot to talk about. Not just for what's I think is, I mean, not for what I think Kirby's going to continue to build in Athens, but what it does to Alabama, because that guy was, I don't want to go too far out here, but kind of like what Frank Wilson is for LSU, kind of like
I
what
agree.
Brad Davis is, like these guys that you see them walk into your high school, you know exactly who they are. They know your coach. They coached your coach. You know, Travaris Robertson, although he's not that old, he's got that kind of pull when he walks into a school.
Mhm.
And so they lost some key guys. Now, like you said, Alabama's still going to be that brand. They are still, you know, the Crimson. It's all going to matter to these kids. It's just going to be different. And that's not there. I'll say this too. I don't think there's anything Kalen DeBoer can do to combat it. And that's the scary part for Alabama. And I think it's the big part for everyone nationally. There's nothing he can do other than Nick Saban come back and be the head coach to do that. You know, there's nothing he can't help that. He's got to be the best version of himself there. And unless he wins, you know, 6 national titles over the next 10 years, it's going to fall off no matter what.
And he's not, with all due respect, he's just not
Yeah.
going to do that. You know, it's funny. The only thing that I'm holding out for is that Nick, and let's just call a spade. I don't think Alabama had to pay necessarily as much as some schools, because, like, hey, look, we're Alabama. You're gonna get your money, but we're Alabama, so they're setting the standard of what guys should be paid. Other schools would have to come in and overpay to get the kid to come there. The thing that I'm holding out for Alabama, they have not had to go into NIL the way that other teams have had to because of Nick.
They are now.
They're going to have to now. So you want to see a brand like Texas, you want to see a brand that will spend money. If you think that Alabama, the monsters out there in Tuscaloosa, won't wake up, you're a damn fool. So they're going to have to do that more than they ever have. All right, I've kept you. I was hoping this could be 30 minutes. I kept you 8 minutes and 20 seconds over the limit. But I greatly appreciate you joining us, man. Bryce Koon, 24/7 Sports. Tell everybody where they can catch all your stuff, everything that you're doing this week and beyond.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Obviously, we go 24/7, the LSU arm of 24/7 Sports. We do nonstop recruiting stuff. Come check us out. Just great staff we have over there. Good conversations on the message boards. And then I know we've mentioned this too. I do my own podcast, own show where we talk college football. We went long last night, and it was a ton of fun talking about 2024 new coaches. But it's called The Crowded Booth. You can find us on all social media. We've got some fun interviews coming up, and man, continuing to crank out content over there. So, Blake, I know for you as well, man. I mean, like I was anticipating a little bit of a breather. That it's just crazy, and it's good for people like us. You know, obviously, I have my job at 24/7 Sports, but the independent content creators that you and I kind of are in this field. It's great for us because it keeps that algorithm moving. It keeps content. It keeps people engaged, and it's just a great time, man. It's a great time talking college football.
No
So
doubt.
It's
And,
awesome.
and I tell people this all the time. They think I'm crazy. When I say something, okay, like defending the NCAA versus Tennessee, I want chaos. Chaos makes me
Yes.
serious money. Like, what are you just so don't what are you talking about? Like last month, okay, or the last 2 months, the views have been the same when they should have dropped off. So don't tell me that I don't want chaos, but it's just I do think that it, just throwing that in there. Please, yes. Oh, and by the way, April 15th.
Let's kick it off again.
It's gonna kick off again. So we only